And welcome back, everyone. It's Chevy again, and we're playing Friday the 13th. This time around, I'll be actually playing as Deborah. Now, a little rundown of Deborah's stats. She basically has the best repair. She's a 10 out of 10. Her stealth is a 9 out of 10. Now, her weak points are going to be her strength, her luck, and her speed and stamina. Those are going to be below 5, with strength being the weakest one, her stamina being about a 3. Her composure is basically very average, so she's not going to get spooked too ridiculously when she sees Jason, but she's also still going to be a little bit of a test to get out of Jason's grab. So if you have any perks that you can go ahead and use to get that composure stat up above, it'll definitely help when you get into sticky situations. Now, unlike Vanessa, she is more of a repair type character. Since her repair is so high, that skill check is going to be super easy. It'll probably be 2 or less, and they'll be going so quickly, and the skill checks will be so large that you'll have a very, very hard time messing it up. It does happen. It's happened to me a couple of times, but just breathe, relax, do it, and you'll be fine. Now, with this map, it looks like we're playing on the Jarvis residence. I have a very love-hate relationship with this map, simply because there is a very big discrepancy on where things are located. So I'll let you enjoy the cutscene. Alright, so here we are. Now, with Deborah, I always go ahead with any of my characters. I always check very quickly on that objectives list to see what vehicles are available as a way of escape. So on this map, it looks like we have the motorboat and the 2-seater car. Now, I like the boat simply because there's only 2 objects that you need in order to leave. However, one of them is really hard to find. It is the propeller. It's very small. It's something that you can always miss. So you're going to see in the video that I'm going to do my best to check every desk, nick and cranny, everything, just to make sure that I don't miss it. Sometimes it's very, very easy to walk by it. It normally is always on a shelf, so keep that in mind when you're looking around, that to make sure you're checking shelves. That way you can make sure that you don't accidentally pass it by. So right here, it looks like I'm getting the gas, which is great. I always, even if you're not going to take the item, please just pick it up and drop it so everyone else in the match knows where that item is. Even if you're not going to take it, it's a really, really, really big help for everyone else to know that that's where the item may be. Even if it's only for a second and you decide to take it anyway, at least people are aware that one of the things has already been taken. Trust me, I hate looking all over the map only to find people didn't do the simplest thing of taking it up and then dropping it back down. So here I'm going to go ahead and make my way towards the boat. So the idea right now is, my plan when I started this match is to leave via the boat. Now, obviously, like I said, the propeller is so difficult to find sometimes. Sometimes you need to adjust it. So as you can see, these 2 skill checks go by very fast. It's basically just pushing R1 and R1. Sometimes if you can get really good with the skill checks, you can actually memorize the ones that are for specific tasks, and that makes it even easier to go ahead and do things. Now, with Deborah, I don't necessarily play her very often, but obviously I needed to get out of my comfort zone in order to give you an idea of what it looks like to play her. So with Deborah, my advice basically is to kind of focus on the objectives as much as possible, whether it's fixing the phone, fixing the boat, fixing the cars, or things of that nature. Since she is very stealthy, you can actually walk and to a certain extent run without making too much noise. Now here Jason is around, obviously because he must be around certain people. Now the best thing to do when he's around but he's not quite sure that you're there, since it's very, very early in the game, what you need to do is try to get into a cabin and just kind of put yourself into a nook or cranny, just like it was there previously. before he can sense you. Since the Jasons go ahead and get their powers at timed intervals, he's not going to have all of his powers at once. So this early on in the game, he still does not have the sense ability, which allows him to basically Jason vision you inside cabins and things like that. So this buys you a little bit of time. So it looks like this cabin has already been raided. As you can see, I'm just checking on these desks just to make sure that someone didn't leave the propeller lying around. Because sometimes I've seen it just lie right there. Someone confuses it for that fan, and then, you know, I could have left 20 minutes ago. Well, an exaggeration, obviously, 5 minutes ago, and then here we are. Now, biggest thing here is always check around, make sure. I know that a lot of times there will be some drawers that are unopened. Obviously, most of the time, if everything's been open and one of the drawers is not open, it means either somebody already had the item or they weren't going to pick up the item. Usually that's maps and radios and things of that nature. Now with her, I definitely like to solo it. She's a real asset with a group. So if you're playing in a party, somebody having a Deborah is always a good idea. Technically, I would prefer an AJ, and that'll be in the next video coming. And I will show you basically how she works as far as playing. Now here I am actually soloing by myself. So as you can see, I'm taking a more passive approach. I'm being very careful, and I'm constantly looking at not only my mini map, but also the full-size map to make sure I know where most of the other counselors are. Now when it comes to playing with Deborah, since she is a very high repair character and not necessarily a strength character, you want to make sure that you're playing to that strength, which means try to get to the parts as quickly as possible and fix objectives, and try not to stand one-on-one with Jason. I see on this map that there's a lot of people towards the bottom of the map, and that's the one trouble that I have with this Jarvis Residence map, is that there are usually 4 or 5 of the cabins on the lower portion of the map, which usually means that the fuse is going to be down there, which is always a hot zone for Jason's, and one of the other items for one of the vehicles. As you can see, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 people down there, and someone has dropped the fuse. So somewhere in that vicinity from those 5 cabins, it's a very good chance that the fuse box is there. So I tend to always look at that map and see where they are, simply so I can go ahead and get the idea of what's going on, because you don't want to be going in the direction of where Jason has been, and you kind of want to see if you can predict the area that Jason will be going to. So right now I see that there's quite a bit of people down there, and they all seem to be spreading out. Now the good thing right here that you see me pausing basically is I hear someone throwing those firecrackers. Now that tells me that Jason is there, and obviously someone is having to distract him in some manner or form so they can get away, which means I need to go further up north from where that direction is coming from. If you can, it's really good that you play with headphones on just so you can hear all of the noise that's going around. There's a lot of audio clues that give you hints about whether Jason is around, if he's close. You can hear people fixing things. You can hear people when they're getting trapped, when they're dying. All of these things will just help you survive the night a lot better. So here I am keeping going north just so I can be as far away from the Jason as possible. And I still see that they're on that lower portion of the map. They look like they're migrating towards the right side of the map, which means one thing, that Jason's potentially chasing them. Now they could have lost Jason, but since I don't know that, I'm gonna keep staying up here and hope I can find the other items for the boat. Now I see there's gas here, so with this I say sure, why not, to put it in the car, because maybe I might not find the boat, because I see someone down there has the battery. So someone obviously is still carrying it with them, so they're within a close enough distance to go. Now, I did this earlier in the video and I'm doing it again. The only reason I feel comfortable enough to do this is simply because I know a general area of where Jason is going. Normally, I wouldn't advise you to go into the water, because as you can see, that white circle over my cursor is super, super huge. So you make an amazing amount of noise when you're in the water. There is a perk called Aquanaut to basically counteract the noise that you're making. But to be honest, it's kind of pointless compared to the other perks that you could be using that are much more beneficial to your character. It's one way to combat it, but frankly, I would just try to avoid the water altogether, simply because there are quite a bit of Jasons that are very, very speedy in the water. So now I'm putting in the gas. I'm hoping that maybe they're still coming up, but now I see that one less person is actually down there. So someone has actually died, and they're still kind of staying in that area. Now, here on this map, there are 2 residents, one being the Tommy house and another being another residence here. Now, I always advise to go through this garage, basement area actually, just because a lot of times if you're circling around the map and you're not finding items, sometimes this will buy you a little time. So I'm really lucky right now because I have 3 knives. So if I even get close to Jason, I can always take out a trap with one of the knives, and I can go ahead and stab him if he does by chance get me. Normally there's always some good stuff, melee weapons here. Now, as you can see, I spotted the propeller, but I very easily could have just glossed over it and walked away without even realizing it. But I'm obviously taking my time, and I'm not rushing it since I know what area Jason is in, basically, that I need to look at every nook and cranny and make sure that I get the stuff that I need. So right here, again, I can see that those people are now starting to move more north, and I need to get to where I'm going as quickly as possible. Obviously, he must be on their tail now since they're making their way up, and it's 2 people together. Normally,
holy shit!
That's usually what happens.
Is that a
now,
dead body?
This was a mistake that I made. Now, normally when you're walking around and it's starting to get later into the game, you do need to be really careful about where you're walking and trying your best to use this camera angle to your advantage. I could have avoided seeing that body had I been moving the camera and paying attention a little better. But thankfully, Jason is obviously preoccupied, and I'm so far away from the action that you can't even sense my fear. And thankfully, my character has good composure, so they're not freaking out right now. Now, as you see, what I did there is I looked at the map once again, and I know it seems like I keep pausing. Now, I did that simply because I need to make sure where I need to drive the boat. A lot of times I've seen a lot of people fix the boat and then go in the complete opposite direction of where they need to go. So just before you get to the boat, just double check, look at the map, see where you need to head, and then go in that direction. Because right now, my heart is racing, and I'm hoping to God that Jason is too preoccupied trying to kill the other counselors that he doesn't realize that I am leaving in the boat. Now, once you see these 2 red buoys, that means that's your exit, and once you get close enough to them, it automatically takes control, and you're home free. Now, I have survived the night. Thankfully, I was able to get the boat parts. Now, let's see what the rest of the counselors that are alive are doing. So here we see a Vanessa player, and she obviously has the battery. Now, what is she doing? So she's going to be jumping into the water. Now, as you can see, you can obviously swim in that fashion too, but it does make quite a bit of noise. So they obviously have been getting chased, and that person, Jason, is nearby somewhere, and I think that other player is going to end up being really close to where the Jason is too. Oh, yes, they're all. There's the Jason. Oh, and throwing knives happen right there. Now, the thing that I would criticize about this Vanessa player is she should have simply have just dropped the battery right by the car. I prefer to do that simply because it gives the other person the opportunity to be able to put in the item for you, meanwhile that you're being chased by the Jason. So it buys people time. Obviously, it looks like she had the keys as well. So maybe in her eyes, that wasn't in her best interest to do so. I can understand that, definitely. You can hang on to the keys. I don't fault anyone for hanging on to the keys. I've been, left behind plenty of times myself to not want to drop the keys as well. But the battery could have been left, and it could have been potentially life-saving for the other person. But it seems like maybe the other person may be further away. Now, from what's happening here, the next mistake that this Vanessa did is not setting that trap again. I would have simply just set it up again, so it would have been easy enough, so that way that Jason, if they come in, they get in that trap again. Especially because it looks like they're breaking down the door anyway. So that would have bought them a little more time. But obviously in the heat of the moment, in the heat of the game, you're not really thinking about what to do. I always personally like to put the traps down. It always can buy you precious seconds when you're needing to run away and get around. Now here in one of the house residences, I don't really recommend locking the doors in the bottom, simply because there are usually 1 or 2 hit breaks anyway, and now that it's later in the game, the Jason is potentially in rage mode already. So here I'm just flipping over to the other characters to see where they are. Now right here, what this Vanessa player is about to do, it looks like, yep, she's going to jump out of the window. Now, obviously, don't do this if you don't have a medical spray. If you do, it helps because you will get injured on the way down, and then you can buy yourself some more time. However, if you don't, you'll start to limp, and then you won't get anywhere, and the Jason will immediately either shift or morph outside, and you will have no recourse at that point. Now right here, I'm not sure if it's the lag that's going on, but I think that the Vanessa player has a little too much fear, so they can't exactly see where they are. So I think they're just kind of running around, not realizing it. Oh, there's some more lag, so let's see if they can get out of this one. Oh, and he got her. As with Vanessa, and head punch. As with Vanessa, as you know, she's a very low composure character, which means she cannot get out of Jason's grab on her own unless the Jason is just playing around with you, basically. Now, let's see where this Deborah is. She almost has the same character colors as I do, except my Deborah has black pants. Let's see how long she can survive. So I see that she has a flare gun, and she's in a cabin, which is good. That's usually the best way of action, is to be in a cabin, simply because you can put, doors, windows in between you and the Jason. It buys you a little more time since you have to either open it or break them down. That was a really close call for this Deborah. Now let's see. Where is she going? Now, one thing that I like that this Deborah is doing is that she waited till almost the last conceivable second to shoot off that flare. It's really important that with that, the shotgun, since they only have one shot, that you try your absolute best not to miss that shot. Because if you do miss the shot, then, well, you're going to end up just not buying yourself the time you needed and dying all the more sooner. Now, obviously, this player is also seeming to lag because I didn't think they hit the Jason enough to actually warrant the stun, but we shall see whether or not they can survive. Oh, almost grabbed that person. And, okay, now that was a good stun. Let's see, where is she going to run to now? I'm not sure why she's waiting, potentially because her fear may be high. And oh, she missed that strike. Oh, and there we go again. Another death. And I think those were the last 2 people. So, thank you so much for going ahead and watching this second episode of Friday the 13th. Give me any feedback, any comments, anything that you do with Deborah that maybe I could do better, and that way we can all get better and survive the night. So thanks again for watching, and stay tuned for another episode.